The call came while I was 40 feet underwater. Your son is dead. 10 years old, in a wheelchair, shot by our neighbor over grass length. She killed my boy and smiled in court. I'm a Navy SEAL. I know 100 ways to get justice. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The call came through while I was in the middle of a training exercise, 40 feet underwater in full combat gear. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, surface immediately. Family emergency. Those 2 words, family emergency, made my blood turn to ice. I shot up through the water faster than protocol allowed, my mind racing through every terrible possibility. But nothing could have prepared me for what they told me when I reached the surface. Sir, there's been an incident at your home. Your son, the young officer's voice cracked. Your son is dead, sir. I'm so sorry. My son. My 10-year-old boy. My Jake. Dead. The world stopped spinning. The sound of waves, shouting instructors, helicopter rotors overhead, it all faded into silence. Just that one word echoing in my skull. Dead. 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 How? My voice didn't sound like my own. A neighbor shot him, sir. The police are on scene now. I was on a transport helicopter within 3 minutes, still in my wet training gear, water dripping onto the floor, my heart hammering so hard I thought my chest would explode. Jake. My sweet, gentle boy who loved comic books and video games and couldn't walk without his wheelchair. Jake, who smiled despite the cerebral palsy that twisted his body, who laughed at my terrible jokes, who told me every single day that he loved me. Someone had shot my son. The 40-minute flight felt like 40 hours. I sat rigid in my seat, my mind refusing to process what was happening. This had to be a mistake. Some horrible mistake. Jake was supposed to be at home with his mother, safe, watching his favorite shows, eating the mac and cheese he loved. He couldn't be dead. But when the helicopter landed at the base closest to my home and I saw my wife Rebecca's brother waiting for me with tears streaming down his face, I knew it was real. Marcus, he choked out. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tell me what happened. My voice was calm, cold, the voice I used on missions when emotions could get people killed. Tell me everything. Jake had been outside in our front yard playing with his toy cars. He loved lining them up on the sidewalk, making races, creating elaborate stories. Rebecca had been inside making lunch, checking on him through the window every few minutes like she always did. Our neighbor, Patricia Holloway, was the HOA president. She'd been a problem since we moved in 2 years ago, constantly complaining about everything. Our car parked on the street, our trash cans visible for an extra hour, the ramp we'd installed for Jake's wheelchair without proper approval. We'd ignored her mostly. I was deployed half the year, and Rebecca had enough to deal with caring for Jake without fighting petty battles with a bitter neighbor. That morning, Patricia had decided our lawn was too long. 3.5 inches when the HOA rules stated 3 inches maximum. She'd come over with her measuring tape and her camera, documenting the violation, and found Jake on the sidewalk with his toy cars. Where's your mother? She demanded. Jake, who was shy with strangers, had pointed toward the house without speaking. His cerebral palsy affected his speech, made words difficult. Most people were patient. Patricia Holloway was not most people. I need to speak with your mother about this lawn. It's completely unacceptable. Do you understand me? Jake had nodded, still not speaking, focused on his toy cars. Are you ignoring me? Patricia's voice had risen. I'm talking to you. Where is your mother? Several neighbors had heard the commotion and were watching from their windows. They'd later tell police that Patricia seemed agitated, angry in a way that went beyond normal frustration. Jake had tried to wheel his chair toward the house, to get away from this angry woman, to find his mother. Patricia had stepped in front of him, blocking his path. You can't just ignore me. This is my neighborhood. I make the rules here. Your family needs to learn respect. Jake had started crying then, frightened and confused. He'd called out for his mother, the words slurred and difficult but clear enough. Mama, mama. Stop that noise, Patricia had snapped. Stop it right now. Rebecca had heard Jake crying and come running outside. She'd found Patricia standing over their son, who was sobbing in his wheelchair, trying to get away. Get away from my son. Rebecca had shouted, running toward them. Your lawn is in violation, Patricia had said, as if that explained everything. I'm issuing a citation and a fine. This is the 3rd violation this month. The HOA board will be discussing eviction procedures. Eviction? Are you insane? This is our home. Then maintain it properly. And teach your child some manners. He completely ignored me. Rebecca had lost it then. 2 years of harassment, 2 years of petty citations and threats, 2 years of this woman treating them like criminals over grass length and mailbox colors. It all came pouring out. My son has cerebral palsy. He's 10 years old and he was playing with his toys. You don't talk to him, you don't go near him, you leave him alone. Don't tell me what to do. This is my neighborhood. It's our neighborhood. We live here. We pay our mortgage, we pay your ridiculous HOA fees, we follow your insane rules. What more do you want from us? Patricia's face had gone red with rage. I want you people gone. You don't belong here. Coming into this community with your disabled child, your ramps and your special equipment, lowering everyone's property values. Rebecca had slapped her. Just once, across the face, her control finally breaking completely. Patricia had stumbled backward, shock and fury in her eyes. Then she'd reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a gun. You assaulted me, she'd said, her voice deadly calm. Everyone saw. You assaulted me. Rebecca had frozen, staring at the weapon, her hands raised. Patricia, please. Put that away. Please. Jake had been sobbing in his wheelchair, terrified, unable to process what was happening. Mama, he'd cried. Mama, scared. I'm defending myself, Patricia had said, almost to herself. She attacked me. I'm standing my ground. I'm sorry, Rebecca had begged, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry I slapped you. Please put the gun down. Please. My son. Your son should learn respect. Patricia had turned the gun toward Jake. Rebecca had screamed, lunging forward, trying to get between the weapon and her child. The first shot hit Jake in the chest. The second shot hit Rebecca in the leg as she threw herself over her son's body, trying to shield him, screaming his name over and over. By the time neighbors came running, by the time someone called 911, by the time the police arrived, Jake was already gone. He died in his mother's arms on our front lawn, over 3.5 inches of grass. I stood in our driveway, staring at the bloodstains on the concrete, the overturned wheelchair, Jake's toy cars still scattered across the sidewalk where he'd left them. Red car, blue car, green car, yellow car. All in a neat line waiting for him to come back and finish his race. He wasn't coming back. My son was in the morgue. My wife was in the hospital with a shattered femur. Aunt Patricia Holloway was in custody, probably already calling her lawyer, probably already crafting her defense. She killed my boy. My gentle, innocent boy who'd never hurt anyone in his entire life. I felt something cold and dark settle in my chest, something I usually only felt on missions in combat, when the objective was clear and emotions had to be locked away. But this wasn't a mission. This was my son. This was my family. And Patricia Holloway was going to pay. The police detective handling the case was a tired-looking man in his 50s named Rodriguez. He found me standing in the driveway and approached carefully, like I was a bomb that might explode. Lieutenant Commander Hayes? I'm Detective Rodriguez. I'm so sorry for your loss. I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. If I opened my mouth, I'd start screaming and never stop. I need to ask you some questions if you're up for it. Just preliminary stuff. I nodded. Did your family have ongoing issues with Mrs. Holloway? Yes. HOA complaints. Citations. Harassment. My voice sounded mechanical, distant. Did your son have any interaction with Mrs. Holloway before today? No. We kept Jake away from her. She complained about his wheelchair ramp. Said it was an eyesore. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Multiple witnesses confirmed that Mrs. Holloway pulled her weapon first. Your wife slapped her, but only after Mrs. Holloway made offensive comments about your son's disability. The shooting is not defensible under stand your ground laws. Mrs. Holloway will be charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. Murder. Such a small word for destroying my entire world. She'll claim self-defense, I said. She can claim whatever she wants. The evidence doesn't support it. She pulled a gun on a disabled child and his mother over lawn length. No jury in the world will side with her. I wanted to believe him. But I'd seen too much, knew too much about how the system worked. How lawyers could twist narratives, how sympathetic-looking defendants could sway juries, how respected community members got the benefit of the doubt. Patricia Holloway had been HOA president for 12 years. She probably knew half the judges in the county. She'd probably been to barbecues with the police chief. I want to see my wife, I said. Of course. I'll have an officer drive you to the hospital. Rebecca was in a hospital bed, her leg in a cast, her eyes hollow and empty. When she saw me, she started crying so hard she couldn't breathe. I couldn't stop her, she sobbed. I tried to stop her, Marcus. I tried to get to him, but she shot him, she just shot him, and I couldn't save him. I held her while she broke apart, feeling my own grief threatening to drown me. But I couldn't break down. Not yet. Rebecca needed me strong right now. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. None of this is your fault. I slapped her. If I hadn't slapped her. She had a gun, Rebecca. She came over to harass us with a loaded gun in her pocket. She was looking for an excuse. If it hadn't been the slap, it would have been something else. But Rebecca just kept crying, kept repeating that she should have been faster, should have protected him better, should have seen it coming. The doctor came in and sedated her eventually. I sat beside her bed, holding her hand, staring at nothing. My son was dead. My wife was traumatized. Aunt Patricia Holloway was probably sitting in a holding cell right now, planning her defense, confident that her lawyers would get her out of this. The funeral was 3 days later. Jake's casket was small, white, covered in comic book characters. Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, all his favorites. Rebecca sat in a wheelchair beside me, still too injured to walk, staring at the casket with dead eyes. Half the base turned out. My SEAL team, all in dress uniforms, formed an honor guard. Jake had loved when I wore my uniform, had told all his friends that his dad was a superhero. Some superhero. I couldn't even protect my own son. The service was short. I didn't remember most of it. Just the sound of Rebecca crying, the feeling of my team brother's hands on my shoulders, the sight of that small white casket being lowered into the ground. Jake loved comic books because the heroes always won. The good guys always saved the day. But there were no heroes here. Just a dead boy and broken parents and a system that would now decide if his killer faced justice. Patricia Holloway's lawyer held a press conference 2 days after the funeral. My client is a pillar of the community who was viciously assaulted in her own neighborhood. She acted in self-defense when an aggressive woman attacked her. This is a tragedy, but Mrs. Holloway is the victim here, not the aggressor. I watched the press conference on the hospital TV while Rebecca slept, her sedatives finally kicking in. The lawyer was good. He made Patricia sound reasonable, concerned, just trying to maintain community standards. He made Rebecca sound violent, unstable. He barely mentioned Jake at all, except to express sympathy for the family's loss. Like our son was an afterthought. A footnote to Patricia Holloway's self-defense claim. My phone rang. It was my commanding officer. Marcus, I just saw the news. What do you need? What can we do? I need the system to work, sir. I need her to go to prison for what she did. There was a pause. And if the system doesn't work? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because I knew what I'd do if Patricia Holloway walked free. And it wouldn't be legal. Marcus, my CO said carefully, I know what you're thinking. Don't. You have another child to think about. Jake is dead. The words exploded out of me. My son is dead because some insane woman cared more about grass than human life. And now her lawyer is on TV calling her the victim. I know. But you can't take matters into your own hands. You have to trust the system. The system let her harass us for 2 years. The system did nothing when she violated disability accommodation laws by complaining about Jake's ramp. The system failed my son. Why should I trust it now? My CO was quiet for a long moment. Because if you don't, you'll destroy what's left of your family. Rebecca needs you. You need to be there for her, not in prison for revenge. He was right. I knew he was right. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's toy cars lined up on the sidewalk. Red, blue, green, yellow. Waiting for a boy who would never come back. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks after Jake's death. Rebecca was on crutches by then, her leg healing slowly, her mind not healing at all. She'd stopped talking mostly. Would sit for hours staring at Jake's empty bedroom, at his comic books and video games and the posters on his walls. Sometimes I'd hear her crying in the middle of the night. Sometimes she'd just sit in silence, unreachable. The hearing was supposed to determine if there was enough evidence to go to trial. Our lawyer, a prosecutor named Jennifer Chin, assured us it was a formality. The evidence is overwhelming, she said. Multiple witnesses. Video from security cameras. Your son was a disabled child who posed no threat. There's no possible self-defense claim here. But Patricia Holloway's lawyer was famous, expensive, and very good at creating reasonable doubt. I sat in the courtroom, Rebecca beside me, and watched him work. He painted Patricia as a frightened woman, threatened by an unstable neighbor who'd become increasingly hostile over routine HOA matters. He suggested Rebecca had mental health issues, that she'd attacked Patricia without provocation. Mrs. Holloway had received death threats, the lawyer claimed. Multiple threatening phone calls telling her to leave the family alone. She carried a weapon for protection because she genuinely feared for her safety. It was a lie. Complete fabrication. But it planted seeds of doubt. When they showed the security footage, I had to close my eyes. Couldn't watch my son die again. Couldn't see Rebecca throwing herself over his body, screaming his name. But I heard the gasps from the courtroom. Heard people crying. Heard the judge's sharp intake of breath. Your Honor, Patricia's lawyer said smoothly, the video shows my client in fear for her life after being physically assaulted. What it shows, Judge Morrison interrupted, is your client shooting an unarmed disabled child. Save your arguments for trial, counselor. I've seen enough. The judge ruled there was sufficient evidence for trial. Patricia Holloway would face first-degree murder charges. As they led her out of the courtroom, she looked directly at me for the first time. Her eyes were cold, calculating. No remorse. No guilt. Just irritation that this was taking up her time. Something inside me snapped. I was out of my seat before I realized I was moving, lunging toward her, my hands reaching for her throat. I wanted to kill her. Right there in the courtroom, in front of everyone. I wanted her dead the way she'd killed my son. My SEAL team brothers grabbed me, pulled me back. 4 of them, holding me down while I struggled and screamed that I'd kill her for what she did to Jake. Patricia just smiled slightly, like I'd proven her point about our family being unstable. The judge threatened me with contempt. The prosecutor looked horrified. Rebecca was crying. And I realized Patricia's lawyer had just gotten exactly what he wanted. Evidence that our family was violent, aggressive, dangerous. I'd played right into his hands. The trial date was set for 3 months later. 3 months of waiting, of Rebecca getting more hollow and distant, of me trying to hold our broken family together while fantasizing about all the ways I could kill Patricia Holloway. I was a Navy SEAL. I knew 100 ways to kill someone silently, efficiently, untraceable. I could make it look like an accident, a robbery, a random act of violence. But my CO's words kept echoing in my head. You have another child to think about. Rebecca was pregnant when Jake died. We just found out, hadn't told anyone yet. We're going to surprise Jake with the news that he'd be a big brother. Now Rebecca was 4 months along, carrying our second child, and I wasn't sure she'd survive losing another one. I want to name him Jake, she said one night, the first full sentence she'd spoken in weeks. If it's a boy, I want to name him Jake. Okay, I whispered. We'll name him Jake. She cried then, the first real tears I'd seen since the funeral. I miss him so much. I miss him so much I can't breathe. I know, baby. Me too. We held each other in our son's empty bedroom, surrounded by his things, drowning in grief. The trial finally began on a cold January morning. The courtroom was packed. Media, supporters, curious onlookers drawn by the sensational story of an HOA president who'd killed a disabled child. Patricia Holloway sat at the defense table in a conservative blue suit, looking like someone's grandmother, harmless and confused. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. Security footage showing Patricia pulling the gun first. Witness testimony describing her harassment campaign against our family. Expert testimony that Jake had posed no physical threat. Medical examiner testimony that Jake had been shot in the chest from less than 6 feet away, execution style. The courtroom was silent during that part. Even Patricia's lawyer looked uncomfortable. But then the defense presented their case and everything changed. They brought in character witnesses who described Patricia as a dedicated community servant, a woman who'd spent 12 years trying to maintain property values and neighborhood standards. They brought in a psychologist who testified that Patricia suffered from anxiety and truly believed she was in danger. They brought in Rebecca's medical records, the antidepressants she'd been prescribed after Jake was born, the therapy sessions to cope with the stress of caring for a disabled child, and painted her as mentally unstable. They couldn't bring in Jake's medical records because of privacy laws, but they brought in experts who testified that caring for severely disabled children often caused family dysfunction, marital stress, financial problems. They were painting us as the problem, not Patricia. I watched the jury trying to read their faces. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked uncertain. Patricia's lawyer was good. Very good. He was creating just enough doubt that a jury might believe his client had genuinely feared for her life. When Rebecca took the stand to testify, I could see her hands shaking. Mrs. Hayes, the prosecutor said gently, can you describe what happened the morning of June 15th? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Jake was playing outside with his toy cars. He loved cars. He'd line them up and make races. She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. Take your time. Patricia came over about the lawn. She started yelling at Jake, demanding he tell her where I was. But Jake, his cerebral palsy affected his speech. He couldn't always answer questions quickly. She got angry. She was standing over him, yelling, and he started crying. What did you do? I ran outside. Told her to get away from my son. She said he was rude. That we were lowering property values because Jake was disabled. I lost my temper. I slapped her. And then? She pulled out a gun. She pointed it at me, then at Jake. I begged her to put it away. I tried to get between her and Jake, but Rebecca couldn't continue, sobbing into her hands. The courtroom was silent except for her crying. Then Patricia's lawyer stood for cross-examination, and I watched him destroy my wife. Mrs. Hayes, you've been treated for depression, is that correct? Yes, but... And anxiety? After Jake was born, yes. And you were taking medication for these conditions? Yes. Had you taken your medication the morning of the incident? Rebecca hesitated. I don't remember. You don't remember? So it's possible you weren't thinking clearly that morning? I was thinking clearly. She was threatening my son. But you just testified that you lost your temper and physically assaulted my client. Does that sound like thinking clearly? The prosecutor objected, but the damage was done. The lawyer made Rebecca sound unstable, violent, unreliable. When she stepped down from the stand, she was shaking so badly she could barely walk. The defense's final witness was Patricia Holloway herself. She took the stand looking frightened, confused, like she couldn't understand how any of this had happened. I was just trying to do my job, she said tearfully. I'd received threatening phone calls. People telling me to leave that family alone or they'd hurt me. I was scared. I started carrying a gun for protection. More lies. We'd never threatened her. Never called her. Just tried to avoid her and follow her rules. That morning I went to document the lawn violation. That's all. Just doing my job as HOA president. The boy was there and I asked him where his mother was. He ignored me completely. Then his mother came running out, screaming, and she hit me. She hit me right in the face. Patricia touched her cheek as if she could still feel the slap. I was terrified. This woman had been hostile for months, and now she was physically attacking me. I pulled out my gun to defend myself. I didn't mean to shoot the child. I was just trying to protect myself from his mother. It all happened so fast. I didn't mean, she broke down crying. It was a masterful performance. Even I almost believed her. The jury looked sympathetic. Some of the women were crying with her. My lawyer had warned me this might happen. Juries want to believe that people don't just kill children for no reason, she'd said. They'll look for any explanation that makes sense, even if it's not true. After 2 weeks of testimony, the case went to the jury. We waited for 3 days. 3 days of Rebecca staring at walls, of me pacing hospital corridors, of my team brothers taking shifts sitting with us because they didn't trust me to be alone. They thought I might do something stupid. Something violent. They were right to worry. The verdict came back on a Thursday afternoon. The jury filed in, not looking at us. That was a bad sign. Juries that convict usually look at the victims' families. On the count of first-degree murder, how do you find? Not guilty. Rebecca made a sound like she'd been shot again. I felt my world tilt sideways. On the count of second-degree murder, how do you find? Not guilty. On the count of voluntary manslaughter, how do you find? Guilty. Manslaughter. Not murder. Manslaughter. Like Jake's death was an accident. A mistake. Something that just happened. Patricia Holloway started crying with relief. Her lawyer hugged her. Sentencing would come later, but voluntary manslaughter carried a maximum of 15 years. With good behavior, she'd be out in 7. 7 years for killing my son. I stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Didn't look at anyone. Didn't respond when my brothers called my name. Just walked out, got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. Didn't care. Just drove until I found myself at the cemetery, standing in front of Jake's grave. I'm sorry, I said to the headstone. I'm so sorry I couldn't get you justice, buddy. I failed you. I failed you and I can't fix it. My phone was ringing. Rebecca probably. My CO definitely. My lawyer. The press. I turned it off. Sat down in the grass beside my son's grave. And finally, after months of holding it together, I let myself break. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. The sun set and the cemetery grew dark and cold. My phone had died. My team probably had search parties out looking for me. I didn't care. 7 years. Patricia Holloway would serve 7 years then walk free. She'd go back to her life, her house, her HOA meetings and her measuring tapes. While Jake stayed in the ground. While Rebecca lived with PTSD and survivor's guilt and the memory of our son dying in her arms. While our second child grew up never knowing his big brother. 7 years. I thought about all the ways I could kill her. Could make it look like an accident. Could ensure she never hurt another family. I thought about how satisfying it would be to watch the life leave her eyes, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused us. I thought about justice. Real justice. Not the broken system that had failed my son. Then I thought about Rebecca, about our unborn child, about the family I still had left to protect. If I killed Patricia Holloway, I'd go to prison. Rebecca would lose both her son and her husband. Our baby would grow up without a father. Patricia would win even in death. She'd destroy what was left of our family. I couldn't let that happen. Jake wouldn't want that. As I sat there in the dark, I felt something shift inside me. The cold rage that had consumed me for months began to transform into something else. Not forgiveness. Never forgiveness. But purpose. I couldn't bring Jake back. Couldn't undo what Patricia had done. But I could make sure it never happened again. I spent the next 6 months becoming an advocate for HOA reform. Started a foundation in Jake's name. Worked with legislators to create laws protecting families from harassment, especially families with disabled children. I testified before state committees about how HOAs had become weapons for petty tyrants, how unchecked power led to tragedy. I told Jake's story over and over to anyone who would listen. And slowly things began to change. 3 states passed laws limiting HOA authority, requiring background checks for board members, creating oversight committees, establishing penalties for harassment. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was something. Rebecca gave birth to our second son in March. We named him Jake like she'd wanted. He had his brother's eyes. Patricia Holloway served 4 years before dying of a heart attack in prison. I didn't go to her funeral. Didn't acknowledge her death at all. She'd already taken enough from my family. Baby Jake is 6 now. He knows about his big brother, the one who loved comic books and toy cars and never got to grow up. Sometimes I catch Rebecca looking at his empty bedroom, tears streaming down her face. The grief never goes away. We just learn to carry it. But we survived. We built something good from the ashes of our tragedy. And somewhere, I hope Jake knows that his father never stopped fighting for him. That justice may have failed, but love never did.